This is the Applied Legal Research Certificate, Rule of Law, Public Interest, and Pro Bono course. My name is Celeste Palmetto Di Nicola, and I will be your instructor for this course. I am a practical guidance specialist at Lexis, and I've been at Lexis for over 15 years in a variety of roles, all serving the large law firm and law school markets. Prior to joining Lexis, I was a practicing attorney in Pennsylvania and New York, and I received my JD from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. Please use the QR code you see on your screen to connect with me on LinkedIn. Our learning objectives. Upon completion of this course and quiz, you will be able to understand the rule of law, its key components, and Lexis's commitment to the rule of law, understand how pro bono and public interest work relate to the rule of law, and finally, you'll be able to find useful resources to assist you in any public interest or pro bono work. So let's look at our agenda. We'll start with defining the rule of law, and then we'll look at Lexis's rule of law foundation. We'll talk about why the rule of law is important, how you can get involved, and the LexisNexis resources that are here to help. So let's get started. What is the rule of law? The historical roots of the rule of law are deep and span many centuries, spreading through multiple cultures. Evidence of the rule of law can be found as early as 2000 BC in the Code of Hammurabi, where the Babylonian king inscribed the laws for his people on a stone pillar for all to see. While making the laws transparent for others, the king also bound himself to the laws, meaning he was not above the law. Elements of the rule of law are also apparent in the works of Confucius, where elements of justice and fairness are espoused, and the Magna Carta, signed by King John in England over 800 years ago, has become a powerful and influential symbol of the rule of law. If you search, you'll find several different ways to define the rule of law, but essentially it boils down to this: no man is above the law. Going a bit deeper, the rule of law is a system of laws, institutions, norms, and community commitment that ensures that no one, not even the rulers, are above the law. On your screen is the equation that the LexisNexis Rule of Law Foundation uses to help understand the rule of law, starting with equality under the law, adding transparency of the law, then independent judiciary, and finally accessible legal remedy. And all of these parts come together to form the rule of law. So let's look at each part of the equation. Starting with equality under the law. This one's pretty straightforward. All people, businesses, and governments are accountable, and the law applies to everyone in the same way, no matter who you are. Examples of this include equal opportunities when applying for a job. Everyone has the right to be considered equally, or the right to counsel in a criminal case, even when you can't afford it. The next part of the equation is transparency of the law. The rule of law requires transparency. Regulated parties must know in advance the rules by which the government will judge their action. This means that laws must be clear, precise, affordable, and accessible while still protecting fundamental human rights. For example, we have the Freedom of Information Act in this country to allow citizens access to government records, or the whistleblower protection laws that allow those that see wrongdoing to report it without fear of retaliation, thereby encouraging transparency. Next, we have independent judiciary, which ensures equality and fairness of law between people and public officials. So, for example, in this country, we have a system of checks and balances where the judiciary is designed to hold the government accountable and ensures that the government acts within the law. And finally, the last pillar in the rule of law equation requires accessible legal remedy. There must be access to timely resolution in a court of law. This might seem like a foregone conclusion in this day and age, but Lexis recently worked with a group in Malaysia to bring a mobile court to the jungles of Borneo to help remote people there obtain citizenship and access to state institutions. There is another way to think about the rule of law. At the top, we have the rule of law, which is balanced on all of the blocks below. Then in yellow, we have the right to assemble, freedom of speech, access to legal remedy or justice, and knowing the law or transparency. Then in blue, we see the equality bucket, which includes the rights of accused and victims and presumption of innocence, and then again, the need for independent judiciary. And then in green, below the rule of law, is the ever-important checks and balances on the use of power. So all of these blocks need to be in place and properly balanced for the rule of law to be strong in a given country. So now that we talked about the definition of the rule of law, let's take a quick look at Lexis's Rule of Law Foundation and some of its efforts to promote the rule of law. LexisNexis is committed to actively advancing the rule of law through its Rule of Law Foundation. And part of that work includes educating people on the importance of the rule of law. On the screen, you can see a quote from the president of the Rule of Law Foundation stating just that. And it gives me great pride to work for a company that is a leader in this space and gives me the opportunity to do my part to support this important initiative. In the corner of the slide, you see just a few of the foundation's efforts, including a voting law tool the foundation created that provides all citizens with free access to the most comprehensive collection of U.S. voting laws, legislative developments, and news. This, of course, lends itself to the transparency part of the rule of law equation. There is also an app that we partnered with the International Bar Association in London to create called the Eyewitnesses to Atrocities app. This app combines law and tech to assist human rights defenders in documenting and reporting human rights atrocities in a secure and verifiable way so the information can be used as evidence in a court of law. And this last one, which we will look at together shortly, is the LexisNexis Rule of Law Impact Tracker. This is a tool that quantifies the relationship between the rule of law and social and economic development. And these are only a sample of some of the work the foundation does to support the rule of law. For more information, I encourage you to check out our Rule of Law Foundation's website, where you can learn more about our efforts to support the rule of law and find all of the tools and resources I highlight today, plus more. So now let's take a look at the rule of law and how it's measured and why that's important. We're going to start with the latter, why it's important. Countries with stronger rule of law scores perform better in measures of life expectancy, civil liberty, and happiness. And who doesn't want to live somewhere where you live longer, you have increased civil liberties, and greater happiness? And the benefits don't stop there, but let's dive into how the rule of law is measured, and in the process, we'll see the additional benefits and importance of this rule. There are various methods for measuring the rule of law, and today we will look at the LexisNexis Rule of Law Impact Tracker that was developed by our Rule of Law Foundation. So here is that tracker. It's an interactive tool that uses data collected by the World Justice Project Rule of Law, and it quantifies the relationship between the rule of law and social and economic development. It measures things like a country's wealth, child morality, homicide rate, corruption, and life expectancy against the rule of law in that country. The tool is free to use and available to everyone, and you can find a link to it on our Rule of Law Foundation homepage. To create the Rule of Law Index, countries are scored against 44 indicators across 8 categories that you can see here, based on interviews with 100,000 households and 2,400 experts around the globe. This is the index map, and so far 102 countries have been indexed with a score between 1 and 0, with 1 representing the strongest rule of law. Countries in purple have a higher rule of law score, while the gray countries represent a lower rule of law score, and the blue countries are somewhere in between. This is the index rank, showing you the same information in a chart. Denmark, with a 0.87, has the highest score, while Venezuela, with a 0.32, has the lowest of the index countries, and the U.S. comes in with a score of 0.73. Next up, you have the Wealth tab, and this is looking at the GDP per capita. Stronger rule of law normally means higher GDP per capita, and that holds true at least for Denmark at the top here and Venezuela at the bottom. So their rule of law score essentially matching their GDP per capita ranking. The rule of law is also related to important social indicators. So for example, looking at child morality. For child morality, higher rule of law scores relate to fewer deaths. And again, we see that playing out with Denmark at the top and Venezuela at the bottom. The next indicator is homicide rates, which usually drop as the rule of law increases. Again, using Denmark and Venezuela as our guideposts, you see much higher homicide rates in Venezuela compared to Denmark's rate. This next tab looks at corruption, and as you would expect, corruption drops as the rule of law strengthens. And finally, life expectancy, which increases in countries with a higher rule of law. This last tab provides an interactive scale where you can see how improvements to the rule of law index score can lead to major advances. And like I said before, this tracker is free and available on the LexisNexis Rule of Law Foundation website. So now that you have a better understanding of what the rule of law is and Lexis's efforts to support it, perhaps you've been inspired to get involved and support the rule of law. So let's look at some ways you can do that. Starting with clinics and fellowships. While you're still in law school, clinics and fellowships are a great way to get involved. Many clinics are devoted to work in the public interest space or offer legal services for underrepresented populations, thereby expanding access to legal remedies. There are also fellowships dedicated to the different tenets of the rule of law. And the example I included here is related to protecting the First Amendment and is actually from my First Amendment law school professor, Arthur D. Hillman. Public interest law is another great way to support the rule of law. Public interest lawyers typically work to promote social justice and protect the rights of underrepresented populations, thereby supporting and defending the rule of law. Public interest law includes areas such as immigration, civil rights, criminal law, public health and environment, just to name a few. And as I mentioned above, this type of work is typically the focus of some of your law school clinics, or it could be the career path you choose. And last but not least, pro bono work is another great way to support the rule of law and is an avenue open to all attorneys. Pro bono work expands access to legal remedies, and depending on the nature of the work, it could touch upon other parts of the rule of law equation. Personally, the pro bono work I have done throughout my career has been super rewarding and has brought me many rewards. There are many pro bono opportunities available, and it's easy to get involved, so I would encourage you to devote some of your time to this important calling. In addition to actual legal work, there are other ways to get involved. As a new attorney, you can support the rule of law by adhering to ethical standards and conducting your practice according to the established rules of professional conduct. Counsel clients ethically, helping them to understand and adhere to the law. Respect the judicial system by treating judges, opposing counsel, and court staff with courtesy and professionalism. Actively challenge legal injustices. If you believe a law is unconstitutional or fundamentally unfair, use legal mechanisms to challenge it. Educate the public. Participate in community outreach initiatives to raise awareness about legal rights and responsibilities, which help to promote understanding of the law and the transparency piece. Stay informed and keep up to date on legal developments and rulings to ensure your practice always aligns with current legal standards. Engage with your local bar association to contribute to discussions on ethics, access to justice, and upholding the rule of law. And finally, speak out against attempts to undermine the rule of law when appropriate. Okay, finally, I want to leave you with an invaluable resource on Lexis that can save you time and provide real-world guidance on handling public interest and pro bono matters. And that resource can be found in Practical Guidance. So let's go there now. Now, to get to Practical Guidance, you'll head over to the Experience bar and select the blue compass icon. This will take you to the Practical Guidance homepage. And if you aren't familiar with Practical Guidance, it contains content authored by over 2,000 attorneys across 26 practice areas. It includes practice notes, templates, trackers, videos, and much more, all authored by attorneys in practice today. It will provide you guidance and mentorship in the most common tasks and matters from experienced practicing attorneys. I like to think of it as a mentor in a box. Now, there's one particular document I want to look at today, and you can see as I start to type, it will give me both documents and legal phrases that match my typing. And this is the resource kit that I'm looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and select it, and it will open directly into that document. Now, a resource kit is a type of practice note, and this is a huge time saver. So if you find a resource kit that matches the topic or task that you're working on, it's going to provide you all of the practical guidance content for this particular matter. So you don't have to run multiple searches. You don't have to go multiple different platforms. This will put everything in one document and make it super simple for you to navigate. So let's take a look, starting with our linkable table of contents, which shows you the different topics that this particular kit includes. So this is going to talk about eviction, tenant, and homeowners' rights, fair housing and fair lending, employment discrimination, immigration, criminal law, civil rights, nonprofit resources, and child custody family law issues. Next up, we see our maintain stamp, which lets me know that this document is current and up to date. And then the first paragraph, which is always going to include a quick summary of what this document will contain. So just as we saw above, it's going to contain practical guidance for those working in the public interest space and seeking resources with regard to the topics that we discussed above. So let's get into the meat of the kit. The first section is devoted to eviction, tenants, and homeowners' rights. And the first thing we see here is a state law survey. So on the left is going to be the name of the practical guidance document as well as a link directly into that document. Then this section is a note to describe what you'll see within that particular document and then the type of content. So this survey is related to tenant evictions, including forcible entry, unlawful detainer, treatment of personal property, and remaining on the premises after eviction. And it's going to cover all 50 states and the current statutes available for those particular topics. Then we get down, we see a particular resource kit dedicated to New York and representing residential tenants in that space. And then another practice note, again, dedicated to New York and non-payment of the rent. Then we see a foreclosure and eviction resource kit, which if we're working on either foreclosure or eviction, again, will be a great time-saving kit to get us to all the practical guidance content for those two topics. And then again, another state law survey, a checklist, some templates. So if we need to do some drafting, practical guidance is a great resource to kick off that drafting with a template that will include drafting notes as well as alternative clauses and phrases. Now, as we continue down, we'll see for the fair housing and fair lending treatment, a couple of practice notes to give you a good overview if you are representing clients on these types of matters. Then another resource kit devoted just to fair lending. Another survey for all 50 states talking about discrimination in the mortgage lending space. And again, continuing down through that topic. Then we get to the employment discrimination topic. And here, not only do we get practical guidance resources, but our editors have pulled in secondary sources from Lexis to help save you time and again, get you to everything you need in one document. We continue down, we can see a chart here, really helpful, laying out the different requirements for experts in this regard. And then again, additional resource kits, charts, and secondary sources. On the immigration front, again, we're kicking you off with some secondary sources to help get you an overview of immigration law and procedure, taking you directly to the immigration statute, and then additional practical guidance content to help you understand. On the criminal law and civil rights, again, we kick off with secondary sources. There are some resource kits here, as well as some statutes, direct link out to the Civil Rights Act. On the nonprofit side, these are going to be resources that help if you're working with, forming, or organizing or serving on a nonprofit board. So we kick it off with some overview of this topic, as well as a video, another state law survey. And then the last piece, of course, is child custody and family law, starting on the national level with some secondary sources, and then going through each jurisdiction here, California, Florida, New York, and Texas. Now, if you think you'll be doing pro bono or public interest work and this kit looks like it will be helpful for you, this is a great place to bookmark it, to keep it sticky to your home page so that you can easily access it anytime you jump into practical guidance, or you can set an alert to either deliver an email to your inbox or directly into Lexis so that you can be notified anytime this kit is updated. So if you find yourself working in the public interest or pro bono or nonprofit space, this is a great source to kick off any research in any of those topics. I'm going to jump back now to our slides just to review our learning objectives. So we reviewed the history of the rule of law equation, some of Lexis's efforts to support the rule of law through our foundation. We talked about the intersection of the rule of law with pro bono and public interest work and how you can get involved. And finally, we reviewed the public interest, pro bono, and nonprofit resource kits on practical guidance that will save you time and help you confidently complete tasks on matters in this space. And finally, a reminder: to receive your certificate, you must successfully complete a short quiz following this course and then follow the subsequent instructions to receive your certificate. I want to thank you for attending today's course. Have a great day.